Clearly, those are responses to cost differentials and the high cost of New York. And what, certainly the last administration would say, and others have said, is that, well, you need to pay a premium to be in New York. And people kind of accept that. But not every business can pay a premium. The larger businesses, the high-profile businesses, one, they have two capabilities. One, they can probably pay, and two, they have the opportunity to move. Some of the smaller, medium-sized businesses don't have that opportunity to shed some of their operations to go someplace else. Those are costs that really hurt them, and really impact their businesses. And those are going to migrate to places where they can succeed. And so, look, we're never going to be the cheapest city in town. We're never going to be New Jersey in terms of cost. But we've got to recognize that we have a system that, when people don't understand, people think is unfair, and people think it's just burdensome. And so we've got to at least try to remedy some of that.
You talked earlier in your testimony about not just the systemic problems, which have been well covered, but problems in enumeration and taxes, and those obviously are maybe more easy to address than the wholesale changes that are desperately needed. Are there specific pieces of legislation or things ministerially that the real estate board thinks would at least lead to a more transparent system?
Look, I think clearly the transparency needs to come from a system that you can explain how you got to the value. I think the single-family homes, people understand how they got to the value. It's based upon sale price. I think with office buildings and residential rental buildings, it's an income-based approach, but people understand how you got to the value. People don't understand how you got to the value for co-ops and condos. That just becomes inexplicable to people. And then because of the caps and how all those other items play out, people don't understand, as others have said, how could my taxes be going up when my property value is going down? And that's the impact of the caps on it. I was, coming, going to say, well, I kept hearing about new caps on, say, well, we need some caps on commercial properties, on income, what the taxes are on income. But there's a point there. And I think the point is that you reach a burden, a level of taxation, which becomes unsustainable. And that's what kind of drives the cap question. And so the question is, if it's an unsustainable burden, should we try to lower that? Is that unsustainable burden a result of inequity? And I think for Class 4, certainly, and for Class 2, in large part it is. And then there's the question, that was raised about people who are in their homes who can't afford to pay the tax increase. That's a different question. Then the question is, how do you try to deal with that issue? And so, those are some of that is out there now with SCREE. To try to deal with that issue, but those are very modest proposals. The co-op condo abatement program was an attempt not to deal with need, but deal with inequity, and then was modified to kind of take away the benefit, if you will, from those who are not primary residents. But that doesn't change the inequitable nature of the tax system. It just says we're not going to give a benefit to some other people, but what we did then was we gave a deeper benefit to others. So we kind of didn't remedy the system. We kind of tinkered with it to kind of direct the benefit perhaps to people in greater need for it. But, need is based upon property value, and not everyone who's in a low-income apartment is a low-income individual. No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. You made a statement earlier that 25 to 30% of the revenue for these commercial properties is going to taxes?
Yes.
And you can document this?
Yes. It's from some of that's from the city, and some of it's from our members. It's comparable to what you're seeing with the residential rental buildings, except that it's at a slightly lower level at the moment. And the one different aspect to the commercial properties, particularly office buildings, is that there is a kind of a greater ability to pass through those costs to tenants, but tenants feel those costs. And that makes a difference in terms of what they pay each year as escalations come in. So,
thus, the fear is that they'll leave the city, or
that's always the risk. Or they'll some will look for a lower priced alternative. They'll go to a place where rents are cheaper. but we're seeing rents in Manhattan, rising pretty dramatically in many parts of the city. No,
And in the outer boroughs in particular, and I go back to the great borough of the Bronx.
I thought you
borough
would.
I represent. The most important borough. No.
The only one on the mainland.
Right. How does this impact the mom and pops? And I asked this specifically because the concentration focus should be on micro businesses, less than 20 employees. Those that don't have a voice, those that don't have the ability to hire lobbyists and whatnot to work on their best interest.
Yeah.
Tell me the effect.
Well, as property taxes increase, those burdens are going to be placed on the businesses that it's either a Class 4 business because it's just a commercial property as a retail business, or it could be part of a Class 2 property as a mixed income property where there's residential above and retail or commercial below. But so the taxes that those properties are getting, the tax bills that they are getting, and again, starting at first, their share is much higher than their value, and that and then in some properties like the rentals and the office buildings, it's even greater still that those burdens fall onto those businesses. As I think as Frank Ricci said earlier, so sometimes you can pass it through. If it's a good market, you raise the rent to compensate for that higher property tax. If it's not a good market, you can't get that increase, so it becomes part of the owner's cost to pay for that. No one is immune to property tax increases. No one is immune to the burdens of high taxes. And the real irony of a lot of this is that, as people have pointed out here clearly, the beneficiary of the inequitable system is the single-family homeowners and the co-op owners and condo owners. And yet, those are the constituencies who are basically upset the most as their property taxes rise. So I think it tells you a little bit something about the property tax system, where those which are the most favored, treatment people are the ones complaining the loudest about it. And you want to spur something to help them, but the challenge is that we know that they are already being helped, and then how do you fix a system where those constituencies that are most favored are the ones that are going to be most disadvantaged at some kind of remedy. Now, maybe over time that helps you if you do it over a 10-year period to phase it in. I think someone asked the question, how do you do that? It certainly is something that has to happen over a longer period of time, so people adjust to that system. But look, it's not an easy system. If it was easy to fix, we would have fixed it. It's easy to tinker with it, as we found.
Senator, I wasn't incorrect with my statement earlier that, according to what we just elaborated on, the poor are subsidizing the wealthy?
Yeah, again, as Frank said, I wouldn't call it that way, but I'd say that the wealthy are the more valued properties are treated more favorably than those which are less valuable. And there's a clear inequity there that runs to the question of those who are high income as opposed to those who are low income. Is that more diplomatic? Is that the same thing?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony.
You're welcome.
All right, we've added one last person, Bob Frederick, who's president of the Glen Oaks Village Co-op, president of the President's Co-op and Condo Council.
Thank you. By the way, I'm going to answer how valuations are done, so you'll understand it. Because of the
Oh, wait, you're not being recorded at all, so
Okay.
why don't you introduce yourself, reintroduce yourself.
My name is Bob Friedrich, and I'm president of Glen Oaks Village. We're the largest garden apartment co-op in New York. We are a working-class community, no different than your constituents, of 10,000 residents, many city workers from the sanitation department, NYPD, FDNY, DOB, and many other small businesses live in Glen Oaks Village, 10,000 residents. I'm also the founder of the President's Co-op and Condo Council, a think tank of co-op and condo board presidents from almost 100 co-ops in Queens and elsewhere, representing more than 100,000 units of co-op housing. Recognizing their value and protecting these hubs of affordable housing is really our mission. Co-ops and condos are Class 2 properties. They represent some of the most affordable housing in New York City. Unfortunately, many elected officials and DOF and others may not be familiar with the variety of co-ops beyond the multi-million-dollar Manhattan high-rises that garner so much press coverage. When IBO was here and he was talking about the value, if you just asked him, take out Manhattan co-ops and then explain the numbers, it would have been a completely different story. Co-ops and condos represent the very essence of affordable housing and provide dignity and affordability for an entire cross-section of the population. Unfunded mandates, skyrocketing property taxes, and ever-increasing water rates have the potential to destroy the affordability and accessibility of these communities. Clearly, there is no disagreement that we have a broken tax system here in New York City. Everybody acknowledges that. The system is in desperate need of repair. Co-ops used to spend 25% of their budgets on property taxes, and today, many spend a third, 40%, and some even close to 50% of their entire budgets on property taxes. I know the assemblyman here was a little surprised when he heard the 30% or 25%. It's a lot higher than that number, believe me, and we have documentation to support that. Class 2 properties are taxed at significantly higher rates than Class 1 properties. In Class 1, we all know 1 to 3 family homes. The property taxes for co-ops and condos are based on valuations that are unfair, arbitrary, and capricious. And I'll explain to you how it is done shortly in a way that you will clearly understand. And why are valuations important? Because property taxes are based on the valuations, and the valuations are determined by the government. The tax rate is irrelevant. It's the valuations by which the tax rates are applied are what really creates the taxes. Remember, valuations are important, and the government is the one that's creating the valuations. So I'm not here to tell you how to fix the entire wholesale tax system, and it really does need fixing, but I'm going to tell you how we can all agree that it will help at least stopping the types of assessment valuations that Assemblyman Braunstein spoke about a few years ago, where he talked about one property, 140. We had scores of properties that had double and triple digit valuation increases in a single year. In order to protect homeowners from the rapidly rising property tax valuations, 1 to 3 families are capped at 6% per year or 20% over 5 years. We all know that. We talked about it before. There is no cap at all on valuations for co-ops and condos. Whatever those valuation increases are simply implemented 100% over 5 years. So a few years ago, in a large swath of Eastern Queens, we saw double and triple digit valuation increases in 1 year. Those valuation increases created crushing property tax increases that are still being phased in now, because they're all going to be phased in 100% over 5 years. The middle class is being squeezed by this, and we need to fix it while we work on a permanent solution to the overall property tax system. Currently, property taxes for co-ops with 10 or fewer units are capped at 8% per year or 30% over 5 years. By the way, in any other place in America, you would say, what, an 8% increase per year? That's crazy. But here, we would be thankful for that. So rather than reinventing the wheel, let's simply apply this cap to all co-ops and condos. It already exists in law. We already understand it. And to make sure that we are not unjustly protecting the multi-million-dollar co-ops that don't need this cap, we can limit its application to co-ops with valuations of $75,000 or less. So what you're doing, you're protecting those working-class families, and you're not giving those same caps to the multi-million-dollar Alex Rodriguez co-ops and condos where you're paying $25 million. It's a very, very simple solution, and there's also a Senate bill right now, 5919, that does that, which we helped draft. J51 tax exemption program. The J51 tax exemption program has been an integral component of the partnership between the city and residential housing community for decades. Not one person here mentioned that. I mean, to me, it's unbelievable. Its purpose has been to encourage and incentivize the upkeep of the city's housing stock, specifically its infrastructure, by providing limited tax reductions to residential housing based on their capital spending. It's a very simple concept. It's been in existence for decades. In 2013, the state legislature, which you all are part of, changed the J51 tax abatement eligibility rules for co-ops and condos. For more than 20 years prior to this change, co-ops were eligible for these J51 tax abatements or tax exemptions, they go by different names, if their averaged assessed valuation per apartment was $40,000 or less. We're not talking about fair market value, we're talking about the government's ascribed assessed valuation. This 40,000 threshold made the program available to many middle-class co-ops. In 2013, the state legislature reduced it to $30,000, effectively making many co-ops ineligible for these benefits because many middle-class co-ops have seen their assessed valuations rise above that new $30,000 threshold. In my co-op, about 15% of our block and lots, because everything is done by block and lots, is now above that 30,000. So we are no longer eligible. It's terrible. I mean, it's such a simple fix, and that simple fix is virtually revenue neutral. We need to raise the threshold back to 40,000 or more, but we'll settle with 40,000 because we know 40,000 will incorporate the working class co-ops and then index it to inflation so that once again middle-class co-ops are eligible. The J51 tax exemption program has been one of the shining long-term success stories that has helped working-class communities for decades afford the capital improvement expenditures for their aging infrastructure. There's a Senate bill, 5807 and 1125, that will restore this program to middle-class co-ops. And the reason why I bring that up is because we've been working with the legislature on these bills. Finally, the permanent repair of the property tax and valuation system. Probably it's the greatest threat to the fundamental affordability of New York's co-op and condominium communities is the city's failed property tax and valuation system, which we need to permanently repair for Class 2 properties. Although most folks are unaware of this, co-op presidents know that the New York City Department of Finance releases its annual assessed valuation numbers for all New York City real estate in January, and these numbers are used to calculate property taxes. Nobody really knows that, but we know that in every January we're looking at these numbers because what is the DOF going to say the value of our property is? Because we know that valuation is what creates the property tax that we're going to pay. The process is so complicated and convoluted for co-ops and condominiums that most people, including lawmakers that deal with these issues, don't understand it. And we saw that when the DOF was here for 2 hours in the morning that I listened to, and everybody, including my eyes, were glazed over. I'm an accountant. I really do understand the issue, but most people don't. And you couldn't even get a straight answer. Even though there are straight answers, you couldn't get it because they wouldn't tell you what they should have been telling you, which were the answers to your questions. Figuring out the property valuations for Class 2 property should not be vexing, but instead should be relatively simple, since tens of thousands of such units are sold every year. So we should know what the property values are. But co-ops and condos are not valued at fair market value, selling prices, as are Class 1 properties. Under New York law, they are valued as if they are fictional rental buildings that generate fictional rental income. Since the values are not based on sale prices, the Department of Finance has to figure out the value, and this is how it's done. Okay? This is exactly.
Oh, wait a second, they're not going to be able to hear you. How do we do this? Yes. Put it next to your chair, right.
Put it next to the chair.
I'll hold it for you.
You need to talk into the microphone. Are you okay? All right, good.
How does the New York City Department of Finance calculate co-op and condo property tax and valuations? The convoluted process requires that a co-op or condo development be viewed as a fictional rental building that's for sale. I have a co-op. It's not a fictional rental building for sale. It's a co-op that people live in and own. The Department of Finance creates a preposterous set of calculations to determine what an imaginary buyer would pay for the entire co-op or condo property if it were being sold. These are the 10 steps to how it's done. The Department of Finance views your co-op as a fictional rental building that an imaginary buyer wants to purchase. In order to figure out the market value or sales price of your co-op, because remember, it needs that valuation number to establish the taxes. So in order to figure out the market value or sales price of your co-op development, the DOF needs to create fictional financial statements. Of course, they're fictional because it's not really a rental property that's for sale. It does this by making up annual rental revenue paid by non-existing rental tenants and annual building expenses generated by a fictional rental building. Because these are not real rental buildings, it's all made up. It's out of a hat. The DOF subtracts the expenses, the made-up expenses, from the made-up revenue, and now it creates a fictional profit. From the fictitious profit, the DOF can calculate a rate of return. And let me give you an example. A rate of return, a building that generates annual rent of, let's say, $1 million and has annual expenses of $900,000 earns a profit of $100,000, right? We all understand that. It generates $1 million, spends $900,000, it has a profit of $100,000. $100,000 profit on a $1 million income-generating property is a 10% rate of return. So they need that number, because number 7, remember, the DOF views the development as a marketable real estate investment that an imaginary buyer wants to purchase. By knowing its annual income, its profit, and rate of return, the DOF can impute a sales price for the fictional real estate investment. This sales price is called the market value of your co-op or condo development. They then take this market value, they multiply it by 45%, and that is the assessed valuation. The assessed valuation times the property tax rate is the property tax. So the property tax rate is set annually by the city council. As absurd as it sounds, this is really how it's done. So when valuations are released by the DOF at the beginning of the year, we're never surprised that a hypothetical based on a fiction doesn't reflect reality. Anyone looking at this can't believe it. I don't believe this could be happening. I wish DOF was here to see this. This is exactly how they create the valuations of co-ops and condominiums in the city of New York. It is absolutely absurd. Unless this issue is resolved, we will continue to see the middle class coming under increasing financial pressure and being pushed out of the city. Creating affordable housing for families and seniors is essential and is what co-ops do best, but we can't do it without your help. These are the big battles we face, and we need you to get behind our middle-class affordable communities. Again, I'm not here to tell you to wholesale change the system. The 830 cap that already exists will be a substantial help, because that will at least prevent these types of double and triple-digit valuation increases from hitting us, and also give us the ability to at least manage our budget so we know what we're going to be spending in taxes. That's it. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. As I might have said earlier, I had an interest in this whole condo co-op issue. I will send you some legislation that I have, but the legislation took out New York City and Nassau because you have your own system. You may want to look at that and see if we should put you back in.
Every time you take us out, we
No,
go
but
crazy.
we haven't passed
We don't
it.
want to be taken out.
No, but we haven't passed it, so
I
it's
know.
a fictitious
I would love
bill.
to take a look at it.
It's a real bill.
Right. Now, I would love to take a look at it because our agenda, what I represent, are just real middle-class communities. And to answer your question, okay, those Class 2 properties, because you asked the question of everybody, those little bodegas in the Bronx, okay, where the guy has a store and he's paying rent, unless that store has 10 units above it or less, and most of them don't, most of them actually have more than 10 units, they are hit by these inflationary, crazy gyrations. So when the Department of Finance comes to that building and assesses that property owner, he now looks at it, he has no choice but to at least pass most, if not all of it along, to that bodega owner who is trying to operate a small business. What he then has to do is raise his prices to the people who can least afford it in the community. That is exactly what the system is doing. DOF knows exactly that's it. The the Class 2 properties are clearly paying significantly higher rates than anyone else. It is absolutely unfair, and I'm not talking about the multi-million-dollar, any kind of protection talking about takes out the multi-million-dollar Manhattan high-rises. But these protections will help that bodega owner in the Bronx, in Queens, and elsewhere.
Okay. I know Ed has a,
Sure.
Sure. First, I want to thank you, Bob, for your advocacy, and I'm glad you had the opportunity
Thank
to speak.
you.
And
I do appreciate
Yes.
Assemblywoman
Oh,
for
you're
allowing me
welcome.
to speak.
just for the chairwoman, these Neely would agree with me that these issues that Bob Friedrich is talking about are very, very important issues in our part of Queens, and we have a hard time sometimes getting the Department of Finance and the administration just to answer our questions. Sometimes we come up with these proposals like the 8 and 30 cap, and we don't get a real financial analysis. We're just asking for them to crunch the numbers and tell us how this is going to impact the city's revenue stream, and they never get back to us. So if we could ask for your support, just trying to get us those answers. And in regards to the J51 capital improvement tax abatement, I've already gotten a commitment from the city because it was devastating. We went from 40 AV to 30 AV in 2013. I've gotten a commitment from the city that they seem to be willing to go right away to index it to inflation from the 30. However, many of the co-ops in our part of Queens
And elsewhere, Ed. There's a lot of other co-ops that have fallen out of that 30,000.
have already fallen out of the system. And we would at least like to get an estimate from the city. If we were to go back to 40 assessed value, which it was in
Right, for
forever,
20 years, for 20 years.
if we could go back to 40 assessed value, at least if we can get the city to give us a financial figure that we can work on negotiating with them to reinstitute that program, because it's very important for the middle-class families that Bob is
And I can tell you that, I don't know the specific numbers, but because we're limiting it to 40,000 assessed valuations, so it's really only going to apply to the real working class, the real communities that need it. We're not talking about something that's going to cost tens and tens of millions of dollars. This is something that you're going to find when you get those numbers are very, very affordable. And the 830 cap that I said on co-ops or condos that have assessed valuation of 75,000 will be minimal, because we're already not including the real multi-million-dollar high-rises. That's how you solve the problem for working-class people while you're looking at the bigger picture. That's the bigger picture, and that's what really needs.
Just real quick, the city has said that if you're going to even just start at 30 and index it to inflation, that's less than $3 million or around $3 million. So a jump to 40, it's our estimate, it's not going to be a huge hit to the city's revenue.
I didn't realize we were even that low, Ed. I mean, so a jump to 40, maybe you're talking about $5 to $7 million on a $77 billion overall budget in the city of New York. I mean, it really is, we shouldn't even be talking about that because it's such a reasonable and rational thing to do that will help Ed's constituents and will help your constituents. How do you like that? We can do something that helps all the constituents at the same time. Wouldn't that be nice?
All right, with my colleagues here, if there is anything you want us specifically to ask the city, maybe within the week, try to get me just what the questions are. We'll get them to the
Great.
city. Then we will have them up in Albany to go over their review and hopefully do that at the end of February. So, if you can get that, we'll try to make that process move. Okay, Victor, you have.
Actually, Assemblymember Bronstein has my question, so I'm fine,
okay.
Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I want to say, let me thank you first, Chairwoman, for allowing Bob to testify, because he brought something to my attention that I wasn't aware of. And to be honest with you, it is quite confusing, but I have a question.
Sure.
Based on his factitious income and fictitious expenses, how do you challenge your real estate bill?
Okay, every co-op, just so you know, every co-op automatically, we're an automatic pilot. We challenge the real estate bill. And when we go there, and most of the times you don't win. But there are occasions that you do win. But let me just tell you what you don't know, what's even crazy. Let's say you challenge your real estate bill and they lowered your taxes, let's say, for argument's sake, from $5 million to $4,500,000, okay? The next time they come around with the numbers, they don't start at $4.5 million. They again start at the $5 million as if you never got the reduction. The system is so rigged against working class people. it's so convoluted. So even if you challenge it, that challenge, when you challenge it, they say, you're right. The taxes should only be for if you're building 4.5 million, not 5 million. We're going to change it next year. Goes back to 5 million automatically goes back to the way it was. And then if you want to challenge it, you got to start again. It's crazy. The DOF doesn't tell you that, but that's exactly what they do.
The entire building challenges their real estate
Usually
taxes,
in
or is
a
it
co-op. In a
individual?
co-op, it's the owner of the building that will challenge it. And by the way, just so you know, the owner doesn't challenge it. The owner has to hire a certiorari attorney who then takes about a third of whatever savings is generated by whatever successful challenge. So the owner has to pay a lawyer. The lawyer has to challenge it, and if it's found that the city should lower it a little bit, he doesn't get the benefit of it, and the shareholders or the residents or the rental tenants don't get the benefit of it because a third of it has to be paid to the lawyer.
But is the challenge based on income now, or is it based on market value of your next door neighbor? That I'm asking a challenge.
Okay.
I don't understand.
Okay, it's
based on this
never
formula.
ever market value because it's based upon what we would do when we challenged. They come up with this number, and the only thing we can do is try to find buildings or properties, which is very
Rental properties or
always rental properties. Don't forget.
Now I got it.
We're no longer
Compared to
Now I
rental.
got
a property
Right.
class 2 rental. We're all considered rental properties, whether we are or not. It's numbers picked out of a hat. It's based upon all kinds of false assumptions. Any account that looks at this goes crazy. We say, can't believe this exists, but this is how it exists in New York City. And by the way, that's on page 3 of your testimony. So when you want to go back to your office and you tell your friends, hey, read this. This is how it's done in New York. And they're going to say, no way. There's no way this can be the way it's done. And by the way, the city, the state legislature, or with the city council, asked the city Department of Finance to come up with a brochure that explained it. They took 19 pages, just 19 pages to explain how it's done. It took me a lot of time to go through it and to go through it item by item to honestly figure out to people who would understand how the process works. That is exactly, and if I had DOF here, they would have to say that's how it's
Okay.
done.
I want to thank you very much.
Thank
and
you.
thank you, all my
Thank you.
colleagues, and thank you for those who participated and listened. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having
Have
us.
a good non-snow weekend.